book was number 4 on Amazon new releases and number 1 in terms of Amazon robotics. So we have an author, a practitioner, and someone well versed in how AI can be used in both developed markets and also in emerging markets. With us today, we also have Kehinde. Kehinde Banasko is the CEO of Skilladder. Kehinde, interestingly, has academic background in physics and in engineering business management. But she's had an interesting career in HR, and now she is the CEO of an HR technology company, Skilladder. Skilladder is Africa's skill verification infrastructure that helps companies, employers, accelerators, and institutions make strategic decisions about staff recruitment, staff training, capacity development, workforce development, etc. And Kehinde has very interesting use cases of how Skilladder is helping Nigerian clients and governments actually to understand the skills of staff and how those can then be further developed and enhanced. And so we're lucky to have Kehinde and Randy with us today to share practical experience of how AI can be used, and of course, how they have used AI and scale AI successfully. So I'd like to yield to Randy. Randy has a 10-card presentation that will set the context of today's discussion. And after that presentation, we'll take a few short Q&A on the presentation. And then after that, we'll go into a fireside chat while I'll be speaking to both Randy and Kehinde on a few topics. So Randy, if you can please go ahead.
Sure, great. And thanks again for the opportunity to join. I understand there are several hundred attendees today representing digital transformation, C-level suites, general AI practitioners, responsible in enterprises for new technology and innovation. So it's a great opportunity and a deep pleasure for me to be able to discuss with you today some of our learnings over the last several years on AI. So I thought we might get started by just making sure we're grounded on a few terms, because AI has become such a buzzword. It's almost become a marketing word that's overused. And in the context of consumer-grade AI or enterprise-grade AI, there are quite a few differences. So if we move to the next slide, I can start to explain a little bit about the enterprise and business side of AI. We're all familiar with ChatGPT, Copilot, and other products that are consumer-grade, but perhaps not as much familiar with what would be considered enterprise-grade AI. So what is AI? Artificial intelligence is simply computer systems capable of performing tasks that generally require human intelligence. And in order to imitate intelligent behavior, AI, over time, algorithms and data are utilized. It's very important to remember, you've all heard the term garbage in, garbage out. And this is an old term in software development in the SaaS business. But it very much applies to AI as well. AI always starts at the data layer, and AI can never be as good on an enterprise level until data is clean, warehoused, and capable of sustaining an algorithm or sustaining an AI application. So everything starts at the fundamentals of the data layer. Data underpins all of AI. Data that's clean, structured, or unstructured. Unstructured data is equally as important as structured data. And a lot of valuable information in companies resides in documents, PDFs, emails, audio files, and PowerPoints, and various other types of unstructured data that's all over a company. So the data layer is what makes algorithms and AI possible. Without it, the advanced solutioning that AI can bring and the advanced capabilities that AI can bring are virtually non-existent. And typical enterprise challenges around the data layer, and when enterprises are getting started in AI, we find very few are truly AI ready. A great deal of data consulting, data warehousing, data cleaning is necessary. Most companies have fragmented infrastructure, generally have limited skill sets internally to be able to get data sustainably and clean at a point that can sustain an AI application. And there's generally an AI readiness barrier that prevents successful deployments. And a lot of what we'll talk about at the end of my presentation is how you can overcome some of these pitfalls and how to prepare an organization to handle advanced AI applications. So two types of AI that are germane for enterprises. One is predictive AI, which is used to classify or predict an outcome. You think of typically a table that companies have, or a dashboard that presents structured data. Typically, predictive AI are trained on a data set or labeled data that you have organized already within your organization. And in AI, it's predictive, learns the relationship between the features or data points in the labels. Thus, for example, a typical application would be taking retail data, point of sale data, loyalty program data, and being able to predict by SKU, for example, what sales will be in 2 weeks. Or if a parameter is changed, if I offer a discount, what impact would that have in my e-channels versus my store channels, and overall to my demand, how would it cannibalize other products? These are the types of questions that predictive AI answers. And then there, of course, is generative AI, which generates new data similar to data that an algorithm or large language model, for example, a term that you're certainly familiar with, is able to understand. So it takes distribution of data and how likely a given example is and predicts the next word in a sequence. So whenever you want to create, let's say, an image of a cat using a public large language model, you can prompt it to say, give me a picture of an animal of X dimension that has whiskers, fur, 2 eyes, pointed ears, multiple colors, and a tail that is as long as its body. And generally, I mean, it could give you an elephant if you don't prompt it, around that data, but could also give you a cat. So the two types of AI that are germane to enterprise applications are predictive and generative AI. And generally, most applications have some elements of both types of AI embedded. It's important to know that AI, when you deploy it, it can drive enterprise-wide economic impact, and results from AI applications drop very, very rapidly to the bottom line of your organization. First and foremost, AI helps with productivity boosts. This is probably as we all face economic headwinds globally, now everyone in most enterprises are interested in how can I save money? How can I become more efficient? And I'll take you through some examples of how AI in the manufacturing shop floor, for example, can help significantly enhance productivity. Reduction in human error, which means an improvement in quality. Harvesting new income streams so you can get revenue boosts. Companies are systematically in our marketplaces, for example, retailers are taking insights generated by AI and actually selling them to suppliers. So the days of where you could monetize data, where you just sold data, are actually kind of behind us, and companies and suppliers are willing to pay more for insights that AI will generate based on that data. And of course, new capabilities come from the application of AI. All of these are very quick to drop to bottom line. So when you're calculating ROI and figuring out how do I, does this project or does this AI application make sense for me? There are multiple ways that an AI application can generate value for your enterprise, both at the operating level, the P&L level, and ultimately the enterprise value level. So some examples of how predictive and generative AI along supply chain work. Management may want to ask a question, what is the return on investment of investing in a new logistics technology? Your analyst may want to ask, what are the costs of production this quarter? What was the cost versus last quarter? Show me this month's maintenance schedule. If you have all of your data organized in a proper way and you apply data predictive AI and generative AI applications, your predictive AI will do the demand forecasting, demand sensing, will optimize inventory, will optimize layout, will do your production scheduling for you, also your route optimization, and your generative AI will read the query that you make sense of that query, and provide an answer based on the structured data that predictive AI has beneath it. This is a nice daisy chain of how predictive AI and generative AI can help a supply chain. Some examples and more specific examples of how AI, and these are examples we've actually implemented in our marketplaces. And our marketplaces are much like yours. They're emerging markets. Everyone is interested in New York quality at Thailand pricing. And so these examples are examples we've actually deployed in our marketplace. We do quite a lot of work with retailers. Choosing the best store location. How can I take elements of my existing stores, marry that up to publicly known data about potential store locations? What's the street? What's the maintenance history on the street? What other stores are on the street? What's the rent cost? What competitors are around the streets? And AI can choose which and optimize which among many store locations could generate or optimize profit. Assortment optimization, recommending the right products for each store that you open. Demand forecasting for each SKU, using statistical or machine learning models to enable optimization use cases. And of course, deep personalization, identifying patterns and preferences unique to each customer, generating tailored content or products that meet those needs. So I'll move in now with the definitions kind of behind us and talk about some very specific AI application cases that work across I would consider these to be starter applications. They're very valuable across all verticals, and they deal with common problems and pain points, regardless if you're a manufacturer, if you're a bank, if you're a retailer, if you're an oil and gas company, you generally have these same problems. I would characterize the general problem that knowledge management AI can solve to be unstructured data, documents. They're unorganized, they're ever present, and every company in the world, regardless of how efficient it thinks it is, has some level of inefficiency relative to its unstructured data. Emails contain a lot of valuable information. HR documents, product documents, sales materials, forecasts, annual reports, all of this data, any document or PDF that's lying about in the company, all of this unstructured data has value. And without bringing some rationalization to it, you have what we call the productivity trap or the insight gap. Teams stuck across the enterprise in repetitive, time-consuming tasks that make errors. Gathering scattered data is not optimal, and it leads to misses and error, which creates time and reduction in work that could potentially be higher impact. We've all gone to meetings where we're trying to solve the same problem. 3 different teams come with 3 sets of data and 3 sets of numbers. Which one is the accurate number? Which one is the accurate data? Missing that single source of truth in an organization creates a lot of bottlenecks. Knowledge management AI takes unstructured data and helps solve and flatten out those pain points. And of course, there's an insight gap. Some teams are always behind other teams, redundant work, redundant analyses, error in analyses, and decision making. Missed insights also weaken work output. Getting everyone in the organization on the same page and a single source of truth flattens out these challenges that all organizations face. So you can imagine what would be possible with an always-on Q&A AI assistant that knows all of your unstructured data. When will the current cosmetic campaign buy 2, save 30% end? Could you summarize the key takeaways from the board meeting last week? How does the PDPA impact my potential language in how I want to structure this promotion? I've worked here for 2 years. How many block leave days do I get? How do I log into the employee portal and what's the link? And addressing all of these questions takes up a lot of organizational time, creates a lot of errors, and obviously at times leads to suboptimized or inaccurate results, which of course hampers productivity and accuracy. Knowledge management AI enhances your organization's knowledge management cycle. That simple. Starting with AI-powered document creation, increasing the speed of generating reports, documents, analyses, etc. The system ingests multiple sources and multiple formats from multiple locations, all of your documents internally, and it can even look at external sources and input that information into your organizational database using multiple document formats and URL search for external sources of knowledge. Retrieving that knowledge by a semantic LLM-powered chatbot interface enables easy communication, quick communication, standard communication across your organization. Having multilingual support is obviously quite important. User management and access permissions, very important that you're able to manage your existing information management protocols. Obviously, certain information is not available to all employees in an organization. A knowledge management AI system like ours enables you to maintain those same security protocols without having to change anything. It lets literally lifts right onto your system without you having to make operational changes, which is quite important. And of course, insights reports with reference sources. Anytime the knowledge management system provides an answer to a question, it sends a clickable document source and a downloadable source for additional inquiry or follow-up information to your staff. Semantic search optimized for company and industry. You obviously want to have a product that's tuned for the most advanced LLMs and specific industry jargon and specific company jargon. The acronym ABC to your company is going to mean something quite different than ABC means to another company. You want to make sure that it's your knowledge management system is semantically valid. It looks at all of your acronyms, all of your existing data, and your patterns of communication, the way you like to communicate, and it will mimic those patterns within your organization, thus creating much more consistency to your culture. Compliance alert settings, so you can look at if you're a CIO, you want to know if somebody from the HR department continually asks questions about your financial data and stops those inquiries from happening. So there's a lot of protections in the system. The system takes multiple information ingestion formats. Everybody has documents in SharePoint, in PDF, in Word doc, in CSV. Everybody has PowerPoints, everybody has Excels. You want to be able to make sure that all of that data is looked at and ingested. And you also want to make sure that the data stays secure within your organization. There are multiple ways that I'll share with you later that you can maintain security around a knowledge management system. Features for enterprise deployment. I won't get into too much on the left side in the interest of time, but it's a complicated system, but it works. And most important thing to remember is that you'll have different technology stacks and different cloud providers that you want to use. So whether you're working with AWS, Ali Cloud, Google, or Microsoft, the knowledge management AI system works very well across all of those cloud providers. Multiple LLM options, all of our POCs and demos, you can choose which LLM is right for you based on your specific company and application. We as part of a POC, we train the LLM and train the KMI on your specific data so that you can have a look in real time around inquiries that you and your staff would typically make using your own data, which makes it much more personal, so that demo and POC becomes much more personal. We support multiple services and multiple file formats. The important thing is that every organization has a different, perhaps there are geopolitical issues around which LLM you would like. Do you prefer a Western LLM? Do you prefer DeepSeek or Qwen? We work with all of the LLMs to find which one is right for you for whatever reason it's right for you. We're very agnostic. A good technology system in AI should be agnostic around these parameters, finding out which stand up best for your particular application. A case study. So we designed our knowledge management AI to work in the most strict compliance environments and security environments, and that would be retail banking or financial services in general. We work a lot with financial services companies to implement knowledge management systems. And the interesting part about it is there's generally a specific question or a specific use case that a company will come to us and ask, like, I want to solve X, for which knowledge management AI is a solution. But there's a great discoverability element to it. We strongly recommend that when you evaluate a knowledge management AI or similar system, you involve all of your BUs or all of your internal stakeholders. You should involve a marketing team, sales team, finance team, a marketing team, a legal team. They all will find use out of this, even if the initial inquiry or the initial pain point or use cases only for a specific piece of your organization. In the case of one of the leading banks where we literally just deployed this a couple months ago, they came to us and said, we've got 600 branches, we've got 1,500 to 1,800 salespeople, and we have various consistency in how they're presenting our financial products, which creates a lot of financial liability for us because we have legal requirements around how we present our financial products, and we feel that we're suboptimizing our results. We need a single source of truth in our organization around our financial products so that our trainers have that information, all of our branch sales staff have it, our internal business development and analysts have the most up-to-date information on it, so everyone is on the same page for whatever their activity is. By implementing this, bank product information, company policy, all the market research and bank regulations into a single source of truth, they were able to increase conversion rates by over 12% and CSAT scores by the same amount just by keeping that consistency of information handy and updated in real time with everyone able to access a single source of truth. There's a great deal of power. The HR department using this said they cut down and reduced time answering employee inquiries by 25%. And of course, that's a bit of a rough number, but that they quoted, but it's a substantial number. I can't say that they took a time and motion study to come up with that number, but they've saved a lot of time. They've found a lot of time by creating a single source of truth in a self-service channel and creating accuracy around it either. So the value to the company becomes not just a time savings, but the value of the accuracy in conveying information internally within an organization. The path to adoptive is typical and very simple. Generally, what we do for knowledge management AI implementation, we like to work with your data sample. So anything that's not a secure or sensitive document, we usually look to about 100 to 200 sample documents. We train the AI on that, and we deliver a POC for within 2 to 4 weeks. It can last as long as you would like with multiple BUs or multiple users looking at it. We then look at which potential LLMs and optional features are valuable for you. We can stand up a test looking at multiple LLMs to see which one gives you the best result or you feel most comfortable with. Review and feedback takes no more than 2 weeks. End to end, usually about 4 weeks on average for a non-highly secure environment like a bank. A bank is usually about 2 to 3 months to fully implement because there's lots of testing around their security protocols and internal systems, and those internal systems tend to be a bit robust. But say anywhere between 1 to 3 months is all that's needed end to end to be able to implement a full knowledge management AI system. So the next product that goes hand in hand with knowledge management AI, and perhaps you're thinking to yourself, well, that sounds great, but how much of my information could potentially leak? How is it secure? If I use a knowledge management system with an LLM, am I going to find that my sensitive data is somehow leaked onto public cloud and a public LLM? And that obviously is a challenge. Enterprises want LLMs and KMIs to produce productivity, but they increasingly cannot accept data security risks. This is where a private LLM comes in. So you need to use LLMs in your daily operations, but public LLMs compromise data integrity and privacy. So you want the value of the productivity increases, the time savings, et cetera, but you can't have security risks. And increasingly, many companies, particularly in developed markets, already creating standard protocols that they can't use. Companies simply can't use public LLMs anymore. They're all going to private. The risk is constant and potentially catastrophic. You can imagine a law firm that does litigation that needs an LLM to be able to look at contracts, be able to look and manage all of the communications and thousands of emails on a particular topic. And then whenever an analyst inadvertently looks to that information and uses a public LLM to create a report, this is a very innocuous and standard activity, but that information is now being used to train an LLM. And I will show you in the next slide, the challenge is that this creates significant problems. Public LLMs are a growing threat to enterprise security. It's been estimated in 2024 that inadvertent training data that's been put onto an LLM accidentally this is not even intentional leak, but of course, that happens as well. But inadvertently, 22 billion records have been leaked onto the internet. That's last year alone. I'm quite sure the statistics this year will be quite staggering. And instances, this is, of course, according to Forbes, instances of private customer information that leak are costing companies over $200 per leaked record. That's just personal information. What happens when your analyst who's working in a manufacturing plant has to produce a report? They're under time sensitivity. They've got to get something done. So they put all of your recent manufacturing data into a public LLM and say, please generate this report for me. That information is now, you have to trust that information is not going to be leaked or misused whenever it trains an LLM. even if the user agreements say that we don't take that data, the reality is we all know that that data is appearing in multiple searches and multiple inquiries. As Niyi mentioned at the beginning, I wrote a book. I can't make any money on that book because somebody put that entire book and trained an LLM on it. You can read the entire book in an LLM now. So, on a personal level, I might say, hey, that's nice for me on a marketing level. But again, if I'm a manufacturer and I have sensitive data, or my financial records that are not yet public are inadvertently put onto an LLM, it's quite likely that someone is going to see that information that you don't want to see. So a private LLM basically takes either in cloud as a private LLM, non-public, or on your own premises. You can gain your own secure air-gapped and autonomous AI system that absolutely and unequivocally prevents these leaks. It can be done on a software basis set up for private LLM with major cloud providers, AWS, Microsoft, Google, even Ali Cloud, if that's a company that you want to work with. We work with them actively. Or you can have a hardware solution fully on premises with literally zero cloud access. We find a lot of companies want a hybrid between the two. Board meeting minutes, manufacturing data, financial data, companies want that completely cordoned off from a public LLM. They still want the value of it. Legal departments still want to know, here's my 200 contracts with different dates and renewal dates and different rates and different responses that I have to make and different notifications. I want to manage that, but I absolutely can't allow this information anywhere near a public LLM. And as well as marketing departments where, hey, they don't mind as much. The level of security that you need around marketing information may not be quite as strict. So even on a hybrid basis, you can have strictly on premises, fully air gapped and sovereign as an LLM, and which basically means fully private, or you can have it on a software basis in the cloud, still using your cloud provider to process information, but making basically a private cloud where you have your own LLM rather than using the public LLM to process your data. The product that we have is quite extensively distributed in our marketplaces now. And they come with sort of standard features that you need to make your operational processes work. Natural language processing, controls around data management. So again, if you want to blacklist certain inquiries, or you want to prevent certain people from within the organization from looking at certain data based on your own internal protocols, a private LLM can be structured so that you don't need to create many new operational processes in order to get the value from it. The larger your organization, the harder it is to get everyone on the same page. You don't want to try to create tons of new processes to enlist these types of applications, and you don't need to. They literally layer on top of your existing security and data protocols. So having described these two products, I'd like to share with you some of the challenges or ways of thinking, let's say, that can help you think about how to successfully deploy AI if this is new for you. AI has a great deal of attractiveness, but there are lots of self-inflicted pitfalls hindering adoption and deployment. We like to really think of it in three buckets because this is generally where it falls. Oftentimes your data isn't ready. And your strategy, you don't really have a data strategy and an AI strategy. So you get misaligned goals and disjointed internal efforts. As I mentioned with our knowledge management system, you want to get all of your departments in an organization buying into this. There's a lot of discovered value. It may not be your primary use case from the HR department. It may be more important for your sales team, but everyone can find value. You need to organize around principles around looking at an AI application, even if it's for a specific department, looking at it company-wide and holistically and making sure your data is ready. The second area where there's a pitfall is miscalculating ROI. Companies increasingly want payback periods of 18 months or less. So looking at how you calculate project value becomes super important to be able to make sure that your payback period and you get your ROI where you need to in terms of your company standards. But overlooking cross-functional KPIs, for example, when you look at this, oftentimes a use case will say, hey, here's my KPI, here's my levers, here's how I will value this. But you're failing to see sort of the broader value that's brought by these AI applications. So you might miscalculate ROI or undercalculate. And then, of course, fragmented fragmented silos. Again, limiting scalability and weakening alignment within your organizational goals. It's very important to look at any individual AI application holistically in terms of a broader strategy. There's an optimal pathway to success in AI. We found over 10 years of doing data and AI applications and over 400 enterprise deployments during that period of time, we've managed to extract some learning that helps companies of all sizes, whether you're a medium-sized firm or you're a large public company, the same principles will apply. First, you need to fully identify your business problems and articulate them in an intelligent way. Oftentimes, companies need help to be able to define exactly what is it that I'm trying to solve with AI. But defining that key business challenge and pain points that AI may help solve upfront and articulating that in a comfortable way is very important. Dovetailing to that is number two, establishing clear objectives. It's very important to set very measurable business outcomes aligned with your strategic goals for AI. Oftentimes, non-AI applications can just as easily or more effectively solve your problems. We often recommend to companies, particularly some of our public sector, our partners or clients, they're not ready for AI yet. There's other ways to solve the challenges that they have because they can't really establish clear objectives for this. It will constantly, it's a litmus test. If you can't establish the objective and the KPI and look at it holistically, it's probably going to create challenges at some point in the funnel of the project. Designating an AI champion, number three, is very important. Appointing a cross-functional leader that guides decisions to ensure collaboration internally and drive the initiative across the financial team impacts, legal team impacts, operational team impacts, et cetera, is very important. Generally, a single person that has responsibility in an organization for making sure cross-functional teams requirements are met is quite important. That person, to number four, has to foster internal alignment, aligning stakeholders early to address KPIs, IT integration challenges, compliance challenges, and your ROI calculation upfront is very important before you ever crack ground. Fifth, engage an experienced AI partner. There's a lot of charlatanism out there in the marketplaces these days. AI, lots of people claim they can do AI or understand AI, and the commitments or promises or over promises made in sales pitches are quite extensive. And AI is quite different than software. AI is a living, breathing, improvable product. The more the AI works within your organization, actually mathematically, the better and more functional and more efficient that AI would become, unlike software, which is quite static. So when you stand up and you engage a partner, they should always be telling you, we'll stand up a POC first. Let's establish some very clear parameters and performance objectives around the POC so that you can see how this is met. We'll use your data. We'll go through a few iterations of this and show you how it improves over time towards your KPIs. It's very important whenever you set up a POC to work with a partner who is experienced and knows how to set up a proper POC around your organizational objectives. Collaboratively develop your proposal. Work with your partner and work internally collaboratively to come up with exactly how you want the application to look, exactly what you want it to accomplish, what KPI levers that you want to affect. And that plan should cover both business requirements and technical requirements and specific integration requirements. How is the data layer going to be evaluated? Is it ready to accommodate your AI application? All this needs to be part of the proposal. When you implement, you have to monitor effectively. There's a settling in period for any AI application. It should always be better the next day than it was the day before. The algorithm should be and will be smarter next week than it was this week, et cetera. So how you monitor that internally within your organization needs to be understood quite well up front. And then lastly, as you refine your processes, and leverage your vendor expertise, scale that deployment to reach maximum enterprise value. Again, difference between a software application and an AI application is that it always gets better and smarter over time, providing you more value over time than it was even when you first deployed it. Some typical ROI calculations or ROI considerations, and I'll move through these slides quickly because I imagine that I've already overran my time here a little bit. But there are really 6 parameters that you have to look at when you calculate ROI for an AI application. First is automation is obviously going to reduce manual labor, operational expense, and increase efficiency. Have to be able to measure what the cost savings are in terms of your P&L. Second is risk mitigation. AI detects and prevents fraudulent activities, error activities, et cetera. So any type of improvement in quality that you get needs to come out in that, as well as risk mitigation. Scalability. AI enables business expansion and creation of new capabilities without proportional cost increases. So you have to look at that as the scalability element of an AI. It moves across applications, your applications and your processes extremely quickly. So how do you expand, and what kind of value do you get without proportional cost increases? Next, AI can generate revenue growth if it's an AI application around revenue. Operational efficiency for streamlining workflows, and then competitive advantages. What advantage does that give you, and how would you translate that to an ROI? If you can get 6 months of advantage because you deployed something first, how is that enhancing your ROI calculation? And then last slide, just measurable benefits always underpin the AI ROI case. This is the most important thing to remember. If you can't measure and quantify the benefits of what you're doing, AI is really superfluous. You'll end up either mid-funnel, abandoning a project, or you'll end up being very unhappy after you deploy it. Make sure you understand exactly what measurable benefits you're going to derive from an AI application. That should underpin your business case and create what you feel comfortable or what your willingness to pay for an application is. In the example here, there was a fintech company that we built a document management AI system for. They calculated their value and their ROI around productivity gains, cost savings, error reduction rate, time savings, and what they called return on data. And this gives you a simple calculation of how they arrived at their decision to move forward with it. How many trade documents can I process per day? That's an improvement over where I was today. And what value does that have to me? What's my manual labor cost savings? It was literally $250,000 annually. You can put that into a net present value calculation and figure out how much that's worth to you over a couple of years. How many errors per 1,000 processed documents would I save, and what value was that to me? What's my time required to process documents now versus later? You can see it's a substantial difference, literally 92% improvement in time. And, it's a glass half empty, glass half full argument. If I find an AI that brings me all this time, I can look at it as cost savings. Hey, my existing team, found an extra 10 hours today. What else could I have them doing? Or you can look at, well, I only need 3 more people now. I don't need fully 6 because I save 50% of everyone's time. That's an organizational decision. You can look at it from either direction. Oftentimes, the cultural regime or legal regime and employment law regime is going to have an impact on how you view it. But savings of time is a significant value in AI. And then, of course, in this case, data utilization rate. How much of my historical data was leveraged with advanced AI prompts, and thus I was able to improve the quality of my output. And this is just us, 10 years in Thailand. We also work in Indonesia, Hong Kong, and throughout the Asia Pacific region. We have 2 joint ventures and 2 spin-offs. Our joint ventures are with PTT Group, which is the largest oil and gas company in Thailand. We built all of their renewable energy trading platforms and price all the algorithms. And we also have a spin-off that does trading algorithms for hedge funds. And our computer vision AI is globally ranked top 20, something that we're a little proud of. And computer vision applications are evergreen. We do quite a bit of work in computer vision over the years. So great, thank you. And I'm sorry I overran my time a little bit, and hopefully you were able to gather something valuable along your AI journey.
Oh, thanks, Randy. That was quite extensive and quite useful. Quite many nuggets, and I noticed so many things that data readiness, clear objectives, data security, measurable ROI, private LLMs, on and on and on. So maybe my first question for you really is, in your AI journey with clients across countries, what has been the most surprising findings? Yeah, what really has been the most surprising things that you've encountered along the journey?
I think there are several. I think one, I've been very surprised that many companies really don't know how to calculate well the return on investment of a project. That's whether or not it's in the AI realm or outside the AI realm. Certain verticals this particularly applies. Like banks generally are pretty good at calculating their ROI and understanding their operations. Retailers are notoriously bad at doing that, at polar opposites of that. But I've been very surprised at how difficult companies, and it's so important when you think about AI to understand what's my willingness to pay. The stories are, you can find online and read the stories of companies that say, I really am not happy with my AI journey, has been, there's a lot of that. And I think a lot of it stems from, being unable to understand what their willingness to pay is and what value that AI is going to bring them. It sounds good, it's attractive, it's compelling, but it's also on a practical level quite difficult. And so the readiness that companies have had to calculate and understand the return on investment of a project has been surprising. And I think the other surprising piece has been the readiness of the data layer across, and big data and data activity has been around for a decade or more now. But many companies still, and probably most companies, particularly in emerging markets, or even in mature markets, we find maybe a different type of problem, but generally cut from the same cloth. The cleanliness of data, the sustainability of data, the organization of data can always be improved in an organization, regardless of how sophisticated that organization is. And it provides them, the sooner companies get their arms around that, the sooner they can deploy AI, and they'll find so much unlocked value in just cleaning up their data layers and understanding, I got a lot of data around the company. What do I do with it? I can't believe I can't harness it, or I'm not using it today. The light bulbs that go off and the value at the C levels that are had once you just clean up even basic levels of data has been quite surprising.
Well, I think so. It's about measurable ROI, it's about data cleanliness. And I think there's a question I'd like you to prepare to answer for is in the chat box. It's around AI driving revenue growth, demand forecasting, and demand planning and forecasting. But let me turn to Kehinde. Kehinde, um, talk to us a bit about Skilladder, what Skilladder is, what you're doing, but most importantly, why are you using AI? I mean, what problems are you trying to solve, or what opportunities are you trying to unlock? And why did you want to use AI, and how are you using AI in Skilladder?
All right, thank you for the question. So to put it simply, we are solving the credibility gap for entry-level talent. If you're a mid to senior person, you most likely can get a recommendation from your past employer. But when you leave school and you have these skills, how do you prove it to an employer? Also, as an employer, how do you trust an entry-level person who might come to your company and could have used AI to actually generate a CV? So we're just trying to build trust between the entry-level talent and the employers who actually need that talent for a sustainable talent pool. Why are we using AI? That's a good question. A lot of the comments that Randy mentioned were really helpful to kind of like articulate this better. On one hand, for the entry-level talent, we want to be like an AI career concierge. Think of it like a GPS, where if you start here today, you want to know, what should I do to get to the next stage, right? You don't have a mentor or a big brother to ask, but we're getting data from all sorts of different organizations, looking at other people's profiles, and we can effectively recommend that. For employers, you want an assessment on the go, right? In the past, when you need to build an assessment, you'd have to do lots of research, do a lot of writing, understanding what the use case is before then creating an assessment. We use AI so that you can generate your assessments pretty quickly, get insights on the go within minutes, and it then allows you to just like reduce your hiring time from 30 to 60 days to within a week. I think those were most of the questions.
Interesting. Okay, interesting. I mean, so you're based in Lagos, right? So I know data is an issue, or the quality of data is an issue for most of us. I mean, historically, it's always been verbal history. Now we're getting to electronics. So talk to us around talent, availability of AI skills at Skilladder or to help you do what you want to do, and also your experience around data. How have you found data to train and fine-tune your AI engine?
So thank you. We actually started off with our own data set in the sense that we built a skills ontology, which is just kind of like a list of different skills, right? So if you are a software engineer, you should have communication skills, you should be able to code, so on and so forth. And we defined what those skills would look like for people with 0 to 3 years experience. So we did a lot of work actually codifying our own data so that when we are now assessing people based on those benchmarks, we can start to understand how our skills ontology are mapping to people's success. So we're currently doing 3 MTTs assessments. That's the Ministry of Communication, Innovation, and Digital Economy, as they train 3 million tech talent. So when we do the assessments, not only are we starting off with our own skills ontology, which we've built, we're constantly updating the skills ontology based on what is happening in the real world. As you know, software engineering last year could be different this year. For example, now you want someone who can code with AI tools. So we ensure that that initial taxonomy that we're building or that we've built is rapidly updating. And then we're using that to test the proficiency of all the new talent that is coming through that program.
All right, useful. Randy, let me come back to you. I think there's a question around internal capabilities. So we talk about data readiness, but what else should a company look at to determine whether they are ready for AI or they're not ready for AI? And if you also can speak to the how AI can be used in a scenario for demand planning, revenue forecasting, etc.
Sure. So I think the first assessment that a company looks at when they look at their data is what is their normal operating process? Like what type of data do they capture? And how much data is there? So there's sort of a type of data and a quantity of data characteristic that you need to look at. Once that is clearly understood, you have to look at how much historical data has been kept versus how much historical data isn't there. We generally like to say, even if a company literally starts from, they're literally at ground zero when it comes to that. Accumulate that data, work in a way to gather it, clean it, and keep it right for a year. At least a minimum data set of a year's worth of historical data is generally the minimum requirement to make either a predictive AI or a generative AI application work exceptionally well. So getting good data consulting to understand what type of data that you capture, how do you capture it today, getting it clean and getting enough of it to support what types of AI applications that you want to do is sort of the starting point. That's something that we regularly help clients with. Look, you're ready or you're not ready. You need to do X to get ready, and that will take you this amount of time, and et cetera. And then, sorry, your second question was from there, how do you take the next step into an AI application?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, again, it gets down to what is it that you're trying to accomplish? What is the definition of what you want from an AI? So if you take retailers, for example, I want to do demand forecasting. I want to take these particular SKUs and say, look, if I promote them this month, and I discount by X%, what impact is that going to have across my footprint in these particular stores or these regions, this store cluster? Under these conditions, how much will be cannibalized from other SKUs in the same category? Like, these are relevant questions that a retailer is going to ask. Again, if you're starting out with enough sales data, because it's a sales application or a demand forecast application that ultimately you're driving to understand, you're trying to understand consumer behavior under certain conditions. If you know that you're trying to drive to that type of solution, or you're answering that type of question, marrying up to what data do I have today that can answer that question is necessary. And if I'm not collecting that data today, we can help say, look, you need to begin collecting that if you really want to answer this particular question. And, retailers, whether you're retailing, widget A or widget B or a series of widgets, you generally have the same questions that you want to answer. We can help understand, okay, where am I at today based on what I want to forecast? What am I missing? And then what's the best way I have to go about getting it?
Yeah, thanks. It's really around tying it to the business use case and understanding what gaps you have. Kehinde, let's talk about your experience. What kind of obstacles, what kind of hurdles, what kind of challenges did you face, either within your team or with clients or in the market? And how did you overcome some of these hurdles?
Okay, cool. So I'll start off with just like the daunting word AI. Whenever people hear AI, it sounds like, oh, you're building this magical thing. And I think when we started building, we just started building kind of like over engineering, right? Or we're building this AI thing that when we do this, it should do this and it should do that. Like domino effect, if you've ever watched Home Alone, how you set a trap for the bad guy, right? So once you do this, everything should go from there to the other. And it was like, taking too long, you'd have a conversation with the team and they're like, how does this skill turn up to this skill? And you're like, that's true. I don't know. So we literally had to take it a step back and then just dial it down. Let's start off with something static and continue to build on there, where essentially you are training AI, kind of like training a baby, right? So this is my initial baseline. When I get these results, I'm going to then add this piece. I think one of the biggest obstacles, like I'm saying, is over engineering it. And I think how we were able to overcome that was documenting what we tried, right? So AI allows you to experiment really quickly, where, when I was a consultant, we would say, this is what we're trying to do. And we would do it the same way 100 times because to change anything was just too manual. Now with AI, you're like, this is my hypothesis. I'm going to try out these things and get these results. If I don't get them out, I'm going to go and look through the data and see what the point of failure was. So I think one, thinking of AI as this magical tool that will just define everything for you can actually make things problematic. If you just take a step back and ask yourself what it is you're solving for, then you can build an easy workflow that you can then build on top of, and making sure that you're documenting as you go.
So do not over-engineer.
Do not. AI is not
Yeah,
magic.
and AI is not magic. So,
No.
so, so Randy, I mean, so you've talked about KMI. I know what you've shown where you are today has taken a while, right? So just as Kendi has said, we shouldn't over-engineer. Maybe you can talk to us about the evolution of KMI and how it has come up in different releases and
Sure.
different increments and features.
I think by the way, I think the point about not over engineering and creating an AI journey, that you start with clearly articulating some basic things you want to solve and evolving that from there is, again, it's very valuable insight and quite a difference from a typical thinking about software where you look at solving a specific problem, it's quite static. You put it in place and then it just does what it does and it never does more. And you don't really have to do much after you put in an ERP system, for example. But AI is quite a different journey. Knowledge management AI came about because companies simply have, in our marketplaces, right? There's just a lot, companies have a lot of documents. They have a lot of paper, they have a lot of emails, they have a lot of PDFs, they have a lot of PowerPoints they've accumulated over the years. Or that they continually manufacture and update, and companies are quite disjointed in how they use it. There's always something that's left on the table, and companies would always tell us, look, we know that we're not using the most current information even within our own organization. We have a lot of redundancy. We don't think our finance team is able to get the most latest information from the marketing team whenever they're doing their analysis, or they need to produce some strategic analysis or some forecasting. How do we solve this problem of all this unstructured data all over the place? And that's really what gave rise to the knowledge management AI concept. Every company has this problem. And regardless of the size of the company, whether it's a big public enterprise or an SME, there's just too much unstructured data that has a lot of value that's not brought into a single source of truth. And it just holds up productivity. Every error that's brought in analysis or thinking in an organization, a CEO's peaceful night of sleep is often impacted by, am I getting accurate information from my own teams? And how do I know what I'm looking at is really right? And so creating that single source of truth concept came about from common pain points across organizations that they're describing to us.
Oh, I think that's interesting. So it's a continuous journey. It's about trying to create a single source of truth. So, Kehinde, what is next for you in terms of the use of AI, or maybe even broadly? How do you see Nigerian businesses using AI in a very productive and meaningful way?
Okay. So I would say for the most part, a lot of businesses are focused on using ChatGPT for creating documents and improving, which is a small subset of the things that AI can do. Even within my company, whilst we're an AI company, we ourselves are still struggling with it internally because you don't eat where you where you're what sometimes what you're building is not necessarily what you're using. So I think one of the biggest things is kind of like finding some tools to automate for one, and also freeing up time so people can learn. So for example, there's this big thing of now that AI is here, what is entry level going to do? Now we have an easy way to actually train entry level talent because we're giving them a tool that accelerates their contribution to the workplace, right? So if we think of it as AI being you hire people, you don't want to put them on a client from day one because you're worried that they're going to mess up. Now you can actually do that, right? So it gives you the ability to scale up quicker, assuming that you do have the business. So I've been able to hire entry-level talent much quicker because now we have AI that can support them. So even if I can't onboard you, you can go to our team's ChatGPT and get enough context. So here's the document that I need you to improve. You don't need to do as much research as you would have done in the past. So I think definitely it does help your team grow. And if you're interested in impacting young people's lives, you can hire more young people and use AI to support their growth.
That's interesting, Kehinde. And thank you for your transparency about how you are also trying to, use AI internally within Skilladder, even though it's something you're using to provide services to clients and to help clients. And a few weeks ago, Verraki did a survey of the AI readiness of Nigerian businesses. We had interactions with over 100 business leaders, and only 15% of them, 15%, feel that their business is ready for AI, or they're doing stuffs in AI. So 85% are still trying to understand what this means. We'll share the survey and also our AI report, or AI readiness report. We'll share it with participants at this webinar. It would be nice to get more businesses to begin to use AI. This reminds me of where we were in the early 90s with computer. And now you enter many offices and computer is just something on the table that is covered. But today, everybody uses, well, most businesses use computer, even your phone. It's a critical tool for business. Randy, let me ask you a question that I've seen on the chat. So data readiness is an issue, right? Talent, skills is an issue. But beyond those two, what other technical considerations should businesses have as they embark on AI?
So I think understanding your current, not just your data, but your current infrastructure of systems within your company is very important. There is, before any successful AI, there is a change management process that has to do with your existing systems on a technical level, and it has to do with your operational processes on how those systems are leveraged. And you don't want to have AI that that creates wholesale changes to how you operate. You want AI that that can layer into what you already do well, what your people already do well and know well, to minimize sort of the challenges of a change environment. So I think understanding your internal infrastructure and your systems is very important. I also think understanding your security and compliance protocols and what levels of comfort you feel with that and how much you want to invest in figuring out that. For example, we believe that, much like companies wouldn't allow their employees to use personal email to conduct company business, you can't allow your employees to use their personal LLM and chat GPT applications to conduct your business as well, or you're going to find catastrophic problems with your information you don't want to be out there. So I think a full security assessment around your processes and where there are potential challenges is also quite important, step preceding how you think about AI.
Right. So, let me ask you about, so ChatGPT is relatively free, right? It's available. And I guess that's why most businesses are using it. Yeah. So setting up a private LLM, having your own secure stuff, how difficult is that? How expensive is that?
If to do it on-prem with hardware, it becomes the function of how many concurrent users that you want, because you need stronger hardware to support the number of concurrent users. A grade lower in security, but seems to be even for banks, would be working with public cloud. So you still work with AWS or Ali Cloud or Microsoft, whoever your preferred cloud vendor is, but you create a private cloud or use a private LLM on that cloud. That an entire KMI system and private LLM system would be, you could set up a private LLM on cloud, non-hardware based, not on-prem, for probably around 30,000 USD. So it's not for every company, but certainly for a medium-sized enterprise or up, or enterprises like large law firms that are going to have catastrophic problems with any kind of data leak, meaning their sensitivity around that data leak is, they can easily find justification around that. And we help clients calculate ROI around that all the time.
All right, interesting. So I'm going to ask you a question on data sovereignty, data governance, data sovereignty. But let me shift to Kehinde. So what kind of tangible benefits, what kind of results have you seen with the adoption of AI in Skilladder?
Okay. So primarily what we're doing is we are creating assessments for you to understand your talent skills, right? For one, I think one of the biggest ROIs is time to get that decision, right? If you were going to do an assessment prior to now, even though you would get the results at the time, it could be a static assessment, which means that you spend a lot of time creating that. Now, using a skills ontology, we don't have to spend 1 year, 6 months, 3 months getting the data to actually deliver a quality assessment. Within 2 weeks, I think similar to what Randy said, being able to turn around an assessment that is specific for your use case is then helpful. So I would say earlier days where we had assessment companies in Nigeria, they would only focus on one singular industry. Now we're able to use AI to do sector agnostic use cases, assessments that are actually specific to your use case. Secondly, the other thing that it has helped us improve is not just what you don't know, but how job ready you are. So we're able to do like a proximity analysis of where you are today and where you should probably be based on all of the different data sets that we're getting. So at least in the assessment world, prior to now, I think a lot of the assessments that people would use were more expensive as they were not based in Nigeria. AI is allowing us to cut the cost of production and therefore offer it to our clients at a much cheaper rate. So you can hire more entry-level talent.
So you're doing more and doing it for
Anybody.
less.
Yes.
Yeah, and you're doing it across different skill sets and different industries. Right.
Yes.
So Randy, there's a question around data taxonomy, data governance, data sovereignty, especially given EU, you have the GDPR. In Nigeria, we have the NDPR. I'm sure in most other jurisdictions, there are concerns around data privacy, data security, data sovereignty. So how does that affect your AI capabilities?
Well, it's a great question, because you can't get outside the legal regime of the country you operate in relative to this, and more jurisdictions are coming up with some type of AI governance or some type of rules, not just around personal data and privacy protection, but AI use in general. But data sovereignty is very important. I think you are typically when you work with a cloud provider, let's say an AWS or Google, and you're working in the cloud, within any jurisdiction that they're working in, they've got to abide by local rules. So a lot of times the data is still kept physically, let's say, within a geographic border. So it's warehoused in servers that reside within a sovereign territory. But increasingly, a lot of companies are finding big pieces of their applications. They need to keep not only just within jurisdiction, but they need to keep it on premises. And that's where having your own private cloud or having your own private LLM comes in handy. It becomes the ultimate source of protection against anything and everything. It becomes your chainmail, if you will. But in general, most AI applications that work within the cloud are going to work within the data sovereignty requirements of any specific jurisdiction.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, so in Nigeria, you have Microsoft Azure, Google, AWS. I know
They have
some
them
of
all.
them have and more, and some of them have edge servers in country. Some have in South Africa. Yeah, so that is really a big issue. So, Kehinde, how are you solving the data sovereignty issue, right? Is that an issue as you train your AI?
Not yet. So we're not necessarily keeping the names and we're just keeping the performance information, where it's like based on people within this geographic area or within the Southwest area, this is how they perform. So we don't actually need their names or have their names. We just want to count how many people were job ready, what were they good at, and things like that. So yeah, I guess we're anonymizing the data so we don't have to, we are anonymizing the data so that we're just getting the insights versus the actual details of who did what.
Yeah. And indeed, I mean, data anonymization is one of the strategies around data privacy, data governance, etc. Right. So, Randy, let's talk about scaling AI, really. When do I know that I'm ready to scale my AI? I mean, as a CIO or a chief data officer, how do I know that it's time for me to scale and expand on what I have?
Well, I think like Candy mentioned, you can't over-engineer, and you have to start out, you have to crawl before you walk and walk before you run and run before you gallop. And I think that's a good way of looking at how, an AI journey should be. And in the end, very clear objectives that generally revolve around efficiency or that can be quantified in a financial way generally underpin the project investment decisions. And when you run out of productivity gains, or you find that you need another economic input or another economic value, that's when it's time to scale your AI. If it's delivering what you need in an increasing way, naturally around what you originally intended, it will scale by itself in some respects. But when you understand clearly what the objective is that you're trying to achieve with AI, then you'll know when it's time to scale it or not.
Oh, and I mean, so you've tied that to starting with the business objectives, and that guides how you deploy AI, that guides how you scale AI. And I guess that
Yes.
goes back to your initial comment around when you're implementing AI, involve different functions, involve the finance, involve legal, involve sales. Don't make it an IT thing. Don't make it a finance function thing, but let it cut across the different units. And I guess from there, my question would be really, how do you get these different units to embrace technology? Whilst while the guys in the IT function may understand AI, may love AI, the people in those other functions may or may not fully understand AI. So how do you get them to embrace AI such that they then contribute meaningfully to the project and then they don't hold back the project activities?
So I guess if I answer the question, you know, there's no question that there are certain, within any organization, there are going to be not only people who don't understand AI, but simply don't want to embrace it. They're worried. And it's natural. But we find that one of the reasons that Asian companies have been, even in, let's say, in emerging markets, have been so fashion forward with the adoption of AI is because they have a slightly different view of human resources in terms of, you know, in the Western or American sense, you know, I deploy AI, I look at the glass as you know, the half empty or half full analogy. I can save 50% of people's time, so I need 50% less people. And that becomes a very easy sort of Machiavellian almost decision of how you deploy AI. But the companies that are most successful with it look at it from a very different perspective. They look at it as, if I find 50% time savings, what are all the new things that I can do? What are the new capabilities that I can embrace in my organization that makes maximum use of that? And I'll give you a real-time example. So we had a company who deployed an AI that processed invoices, automated and looked at email invoice ingest, looked and did computer vision scanning of what those invoices, were they accurate, were they inaccurate, how did it tie into an ERP system, automated all of that, found errors, reduced error rates, and basically had this working 24/7. And they literally realized, well, boy, we've now cut the need of the team time by 50%. But what they did was they redeployed that time around having those same people contact customers where there were errors found, something that was not done before. Some of you get processed, you get a very static response. It was either good or it was error or not error, but there was no human touch to it. But they redeployed and built out a skill set on the team that had a human touch and a human contact, therefore creating a brand new capability in the organization. That enabled lots more people in the organization to begin embracing and understanding, well, AI is not something I should be afraid of. AI is something that we find time with and we create new capabilities out of. And those companies that tend to be more creative around that type of thinking tend to be far more successful in the long term with AI deployments.
Thanks. I mean, that's interesting. It's about a mindset. The mindset that AI will lead to operational efficiency, productivity gains, and then you will have more capabilities, more time, more resources that you can then redirect to some other use. I mean, thanks. Kehinde, let me ask you a cheeky question, really. If I'm faking my skills, if I'm faking my, you know, I'm entry level at typing, and I say I'm expert level. How are you able to detect that? Because you talk about credibility. That what you do is bridge the credibility gap. So if you can share a few thoughts or share a few ideas of how you're using AI or whatever tool to improve the accuracy of the outputs of skills assessment, of skills, yeah.
So, I mean, since we're saving cost on doing it manually, we can actually make things like proctoring, ensuring that we're checking your keystrokes as well, you know, disabling your screen so you can't copy and paste. And I would even say, so those are like your typical security measures that you put in place for an AI, for an assessment, right? So, you know, remote proctoring so that you don't actually have to go into a space and get invigilated. Another thing that we are doing is we're actually asking people to use AI to solve problems during the assessment so that we can see how you prompt engineer, how long it takes you to get to the output and what that output looks like. Because it's not enough to just say, don't use AI to do this thing. I do want you to actually use AI. At this point in time, I don't really want to hire anyone who's never used AI, because to what end, right? It doesn't, if I ask you a question that did you use ChatGPT to review this document and you say no, I'll be like, oh, okay, why? Right? So being able to give people an AI assessment so that they even get familiar with it and understand how it improves their output is helpful. I remember when I was in undergrad, I had a physics take-home assignment, and that was the hardest exam I've ever done because in my mind, I was thinking I could just go and open the problem, but no, I literally had to do it line by line and understand different theories and stuff. Thankfully, I passed, but I mean, it could have gone left really easily. But essentially, I want people to know that AI is a tool that improves, not detracts them from actually doing the work. There was something Randy mentioned about how it's happening in Asia, where it's like you're using AI to discover other things. I think as African businesses, we need to think about the youth bulge that is happening soon, right? If we use AI to lay people off and not hire entry-level talent, in 15 years or so, when there are billions of people on the planet, those are the same people that are going to come and, find our trouble. So essentially, we probably should be thinking about now finally creating our own innovation and research centers within our organizations now that we have the capability. So where you would give research to your entry-level talent who doesn't know anything, maybe you can free up the time of senior people to think and dream big and actually solve African problems. So I just wanted to touch on that as well.
So AI goes back to the original promise of automation,
Yes.
right? Which is do things faster, cheaper, and that way human beings, senior folks can do more value-adding things. Thank you for reminding us of that. Randy, there's a question around insurance. Any thoughts on AI for managing insurance fraud?
I don't know much about insurance fraud, but we in insurance fraud and insurance, but we do quite a bit of work for fraud in retail banking. There's so-called, particularly with money transfers, and these are growing call center based scams that plague virtually every market, but particularly markets that we work in. If you have a large enough set of characteristics around any transaction. So let's take, and I'm sure the analogy will work for insurance fraud as well as banking fraud. If we look at enough characteristics around series of transactions that represent fraud, we can extract the meaningful information to be able to predict what a transaction coming through that's greenfield and have a great understanding of whether or not, with a high level of accuracy, whether or not there's going to be fraud involved with it. So in the case of fraudulent claims, there are characteristics from time of day that a transaction is sent to you, how often somebody sends a transaction, the nature of that, like characteristics of that specific customer, and should they be what we call lookalikes? Are the customers where there are non-fraud transactions, what do they look like? How does the patterns around this particular transaction or this particular submission of a claim, how does it look? You can extract meaningful insights from those data patterns to be able to have a high prediction accuracy of fraud. In the case of retail banking transactions, they're called mule accounts. How does money move from one to another transaction? It's, based on time of day, amount, frequency of transaction, location of transfer, et cetera. And then that's sort of on the supply side, but you can also look at demand side characteristics and apply AI thinking to it to help reduce that as well. In the case of banking fraud, who are the customers and characteristics of customers most susceptible to falling for a fraudulent request or a fraudulent money transfer request to transfer money? So there's a demand side and a supply side of the transaction, and looking at, again, enough of a large data set to look at the characteristics that surround a transaction to be able to accurately predict it. But it works in insurance, I'm sure, as well as it does in money transfer and banking fraud.
Indeed, I mean, it should be applicable. But as a question around data poisoning, model evasion, backdoor attacks, automated social engineering, and those are the kind of security issues or risk issues. How should companies organize to tackle such?
I think cybersecurity is a piece of that in general, I think is what the question was.
Yeah.
So, you know, that cybersecurity becomes a specialty that an IT organization needs to become conversant in. You need to do a needs assessment or a transaction assessment in your organization regarding that. All sorts of challenging data enters into your data set at all times. And again, that's why data cleansing is very, very important. You know, data that you should throw out, it's not accurate or representative, as well as fraudulent data, all sorts of imperfections come into a data set. You need to look case by case at a granular level around what type of data you're collecting and whether or not it's good or bad.
So as you focus on infrastructure, on data, you also must focus on cybersecurity to complement this, right?
It's becoming
So
it's becoming an
um,
important piece of the transaction, increasingly more and more.
sure. Kennedy, my last question for you really is, I mean, so if you look back, right, what will you do differently? What do you wish you had known earlier as you start your AI journey?
That is a good question. And I think it would still go back to the over engineering, which is
Mm.
essentially getting to talking to customers and having customers test out what you're building quicker rather than later. Where before in the world of software engineering, you do a needs and requirements, you'll understand, you'll go and build, and then you come back. Now we have tools like Replit where you can literally create a prototype of what you're trying to describe and have someone actually engage with it, give you user feedback, and you can even review what they had done so that you can get real-time actual feedback and then just improve it. So I think I would have been able to move quicker if I was just like, AI isn't magic and there's so many tools out there that you can use. You learn by doing, right? So if it's one thing, I would say just start with something, right? You can even use ChatGPT to help you learn how to use another tool, and essentially you just kind of like, just like AI is getting better every day, you as well could get better every day by just doing it more often and using it more often.
Thank you. I mean, I like your comment around learn by doing, right? So embrace it. Don't think it's this big thing is so difficult. It's blah, blah, blah. That's and take it a bite at a time, step by step, and you continue to improve as you go along, right? Randy, for you. Um, so your work with Thai Bank, it's came on a private LLM. Um, what is what would the journey look like for the bank and for Kimai now that 3, 4 years time, if you can see the future?
Yeah, I think incorporating more types of data into I mean, there's organizations have data they don't even recognize that's data that can be brought into the fold. So I think after an initial deployment, I think getting incorporating more types of data into the fold, the parameter, or let's say the overarching architecture and what it's delivering. The value of it is not going to change, but getting more people to use it, having more types of questions that you can ask, or more types of data that get brought into it, I think are going to become that's going to evolve for sure. And I think as more what's called agentic AI becomes, which automates not just processes but sub-processes, I think more types of data is going to be generated, and more types of opportunities to automate are going to evolve. I think more independence of the AI will be a part of it, meaning let's say today 97% or 96% of queries come back with fully accurate answers, even long queries. You know, that will marginally improve as time goes by. And again, algorithms get better and systems get better in the AI world. It's like a function with an asymptote. You can continually get closer to perfection and 100% without ever actually reaching it. But But it will continue to improve in meaningful ways over time and add a lot more value and unlock a lot more value for companies. And I think the other piece of it is that companies will begin to realize that AI investments become an intangible asset of the company that can really come to measurable economic value. What really exists as intangible asset today in a company is, you might call it goodwill on a balance sheet or something. There's very few intangible assets, but in artificial intelligence is nothing that you can really touch. It's not a plant, it's not inventory, it's not typically what you would think of in a building in terms of an asset. But it becomes, because it learns over time, it becomes more valuable over time. And I think systems will create a lot of enterprise value at the sort of top level as well because of the intangible value of AI.
All right. Thank you so very much, Randy and Kehinde. I think we are dead. Yeah, right on the clock. It's been 90 minutes of interesting conversations, certainly for me, around AI, and how to embark on the journey, but importantly, how to scale. And a few things. Start with very clear objectives. Know what your objectives are. Know your use cases, and also know how you want to measure your ROI. Focus on data readiness, focus on avoiding over-engineering. Don't try to do everything at once. Start now, start small. And like Andy said, you learn by doing. AI is a journey of continuous learning. And as we get into agentic AI, there will be more autonomy, more independent AI. And so increasingly then, two C's are important: cybersecurity. So as you focus on AI, you also must focus on the business benefit of it, on cybersecurity, and on change management. So thank you so very much, Kehinde, Banasko, CEO of Skilladder AI, and Randy McGraw of Sertis, a member of Andersen Consulting. And thank you for sharing your thoughts and your experience with us. And I would like to thank all our participants who have joined us this evening for our Q2 edition of the Verraki webinar. We will be sending in a few days' time the recording of this session to you. We also will send the AI readiness report that Verraki has done, and look forward to engaging. So bye everyone, and thanks for all you do. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.